When you think of George Harrison, you probably picture the quiet Beatle, the spiritual heart of the most famous band in history. His name conjures up peace, meditation, and those gentle, timeless melodies. But behind that calm exterior was a man with a razor-sharp wit and some surprisingly strong opinions. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on three music icons who found themselves in George's line of fire, revealing a side of the quiet Beatle you've never seen before. Now, let's be clear, hate is a powerful word. And while the title might suggest nasty, two-sided feuds, the reality is a lot more interesting. In most of these stories, the harshest words came directly from George himself. He had deeply held beliefs, especially about music, and he was never afraid to share his unfiltered opinion, no matter how famous the person he was talking about. This is the story of what happens when the quiet one grabs the microphone. First up, let's head back to the swinging 60s. It's 1965, and the Beatles are without a doubt the kings of the world, defining the sound of a generation. Riding that same wave was another band from their neck of the woods, the Hollies. They were chart toppers in their own right, famous for their perfect harmonies and pop sensibilities. The two bands were even on the same record label. The trouble started with a song. George had written a jangly, Birds-inspired track called If I Needed Someone for the Rubber Soul album. It was a big moment for him, showing his growing confidence as a songwriter. The Hollies heard it, knew a hit when they heard one, and decided to record and release their own version as a single, which came out on the exact same day as Rubber Soul. You'd think this would be a cool moment of mutual respect. Instead, it lit the fuse on a very public feud. When a journalist from NME asked George about writing the song For the Hollies, he didn't pull any punches. George shot back. "Tell people that I didn't write it for the Hollies. Their version is not my kind of music. I think it's rubbish the way they've done it. They've spoilt it." But he wasn't done. He took a direct shot at their skills, a criticism that would sting for decades. He said, "The Hollies are all right musically, but the way they do their records, they sound like session men who've just got together in a studio without ever seeing each other before. Technically good, yes, but that's all." For a band that prided itself on its polished sound, this was the ultimate insult. He basically said they had no soul, no chemistry, no fire. The Hollies' leader, Graham Nash, was furious. He fired back in the press, venting his frustration with what he saw as the Beatles' untouchable status. "Not only do these comments disappoint and hurt us," Nash said, "but we're sick and tired of everything the Beatles say or do being taken as law." He then cheekily challenged George's integrity, asking, "If we have made such a disgusting mess of his brainchild song, will he give all the royalties from our record to charity?" Decades later, the sting was still there. In his 2013 autobiography, Nash wrote, "Sometimes, even St. George didn't know when to keep his snarky views to himself. Pardon me if you don't like our fucking record, but keep it to yourself, if you please." This whole affair revealed a side of Harrison the public rarely saw, the fierce artist, ready to publicly crush a rival to protect his work. So, what's your take? Was George right to defend his artistic vision so brutally? Or should he have just let it slide? Let us know down in the comments. Next up is a different kind of conflict. This wasn't a public war of words fought in the music papers. This was a deep, fundamental disagreement over the very soul of the guitar. A clash between two legends with opposite philosophies. The target of George's critique? The one and only Neil Young. The clearest evidence comes from a 1992 studio session video where George is hanging out with Dave Stewart and Bob Geldof. When Geldof mentions Neil Young, Harrison doesn't hesitate. "I'm not a Neil Young fan personally," he says flatly. When Geldof praises Young's playing, Harrison cuts him off. "I hate it. Yeah, I can't stand it." He even mocked Young's famously raw one-note solos, calling them good for a laugh. To get where George was coming from, you have to understand his own style. Harrison was a craftsman. He was meticulous, melodic, and all about structure. Every note had a purpose, and every solo was built to serve the song. Neil Young, on the other hand, was pure, raw emotion. His guitar playing was primal, distorted, and always felt like it was about to fly off the rails. He wasn't chasing perfection. He was chasing a feeling. For a precise musician like Harrison, Young's style was probably like nails on a chalkboard. This all came to a head at Bob Dylan's 30th anniversary concert in 1992, where both guitarists were on stage. Harrison later recalled being completely baffled by Young's playing. He said he looked over at Eric Clapton, another master of melody, in total disbelief. He remembered, "I couldn't believe it. He did the solo in the middle, then he kind of looked at me like, 'Don't look at me. It's not me. Now, it's important to correct the record here. This was never a feud. Neil Young never responded and likely didn't care. This was a one-sided critique.' Harrison even made it clear it wasn't personal, adding that he thought Young was a nice person. This wasn't about the man. It was about the art. It shows Harrison as a musical purist, someone whose own standards made it impossible for him to appreciate a style that was so different from his own. For our final story, we jump to the mid-90s. The music world was in the grip of Britpop, and the undisputed champions were Oasis, a band so heavily influenced by the Beatles that the comparisons were constant. Their frontman, Liam Gallagher, was the definition of a rock and roll star. Arrogant, loud, and overflowing with attitude. For a new generation, Oasis was the real deal. But for one of the original Fab Four, they were just a pale imitation. George. Harrison saw Oasis not as the next big thing, but as a band that completely missed the point. In 1996, at the height of their fame, he delivered a verdict that was absolutely brutal. "The music lacks depth," he said of their work, but he saved. His sharpest words for their frontman. Harrison called Liam Gallagher a pain, and then twisted the knife by saying, "The rest of the band don't need him." He later called Liam silly and excess baggage, and said the band was better when his brother, Noel, sang. This was a public smackdown from a living legend. And Liam Gallagher, who never backed down from a fight, fired back with the exact kind of response that made him famous. In an interview with MTV, a visibly angry Liam let loose. "If any of them old farts have got a problem with me," he snarled, "then they should leave their Zimmer frames at home and I'll hold them up with a good right hook." But he didn't stop there. He made it clear the feud was personal, saying, "I still love the Beatles and I still love George Harrison as a songwriter. But as a person, I think he's a ing nipple. And if I ever meet him, I'll ing tell him." Liam's defense was that George only knew him from the papers, arguing, "How's he know I'm silly? He's the ing silly one." It was the perfect storm. The elder statesman of rock feeling like his legacy was being cheapened against the young punk who built his career on not caring what anyone thought, until one of his heroes cut him to the bone. The ultimate irony? Oasis's biggest hit, Wonderwall, was named after Harrison's first solo album, Wonderwall Music. There's no evidence the two ever made peace, leaving this as probably the most bitter and unresolved clash of Harrison's life. From a cover song he called Rubbish, to a guitar style he couldn't stand, to a frontman he called Excess Baggage, these conflicts show a George Harrison who was anything but quiet. He was a man of fierce opinions, a musical purist who wasn't afraid to pass judgment, and a legend who was fiercely protective of the art he helped create. These stories don't tarnish his legacy, they add color, revealing the complex, passionate, and sometimes difficult man behind the music. But what do you think? Were George's critiques on point, or was he just being an old fart, like Liam Gallagher said? Whose side are you on? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed digging into this side of music history, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss another story. Thanks for watching.